do subscribe to this channel right now because it's a good watch. I've watched the other interviews; they're good. So stay tuned. I was up at 5:30 a.m. this morning. That's like typically when I have to get up for these tournaments. I'm good at that. I'm pretty garbage. I could become good, but Jimmy, if you're watching, hey, hit me up. I would do some jagessa content with you for sure.
Good evening, Oscar, or should I call you Zigzag?
Well, Oscar's good, but either one is obviously fine. Good evening to you too, Sebastian. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you, and thank you so much for making the time. I can tell from your daily posting on YouTube, you must be a very busy man, so I'm very thankful for your time.
No, most welcome. And yeah, I'm only relatively busy, not that busy as it may seem.
So, Oscar, tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe in 3 keywords or 3 numbers, but really just share anything that you'd like to share with us to get a sense of who is Oscar, who's Zigzag.
Right. So, I mean, firstly, like I'm 22. I live in Australia, and then I guess so for 3 words, I could say like I'm a pretty relaxed person. I take things pretty easy. Like I'm not really like too details focused. I think it's fair to say. I think that also kind of reflects in my playstyle as well, where I don't really like try and like find the exact thing a lot of the time. I'm kind of just go more on the vibes. I would say also like I'm a pretty open person, like open to new experiences, open to like just like new perspectives and that kind of stuff, and like fairly like just like to hear from people and whatnot. And then also I would say like I'm a pretty fun person. I like to think I'm fun to be around and have a decent sense of humor and that kind of thing, and just just making friends and stuff like that. So I think that's like kind of like what I would describe my personality as, perhaps.
I think I can tell, or I think we can tell us viewers of your YouTube channel that you're quite relaxed, because even when you lose, you don't seem to get that upset, or as upset as some other well-known pro players. So you seem to be indeed fairly relaxed.
Sometimes I can get upset, but most times I don't. That's true.
What are you doing otherwise in your most of your time? Are you mostly involved on your YouTube channel, or are you studying or working?
Yeah, so I finished my degree at the end of 2021. I studied history and philosophy at uni. And after that, I set out to get a job. And I really, like this, already I was doing YouTube at the time. And then I was just kind of having more fun on YouTube, and I wasn't really trying that hard to find a job. So I thought, oh, let me just do YouTube for a year here and see what happens. Meanwhile, I was like applying for stuff in the background, and I'm about to head into full-time work soon with the government. But yeah, I mean, I basically took this year to focus on the channel, and that's why I was able to create so many videos and stuff like that.
What kind of work are you going to do, if you don't mind sharing, obviously?
Yeah, so I told you I'm quite a relaxed person. I haven't even like found the exact description of the job, but basically it'll be like working in the public service, Australian public service, and like basically like client, dealing with clients and kind of helping in various ways. I'm not exactly sure how, but yeah, with I'm not even sure, but yeah, something like that.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you share this publicly. You're based in Adelaide, is that correct?
That's right. So I've been in Adelaide for the last like 12 years or something like that.
Got it. And you're moving with your work, or you're staying in the city?
No, most jobs that you'd get for that would end up being in Canberra, but this one's in Adelaide. So
okay. And do you like the city? Since it's
I do. It's a really it's a really livable city. It often like ranks pretty highly on those like kind of livable cities of the world, like indexes and whatnot. It's clean. It's nice. It's not too exciting. But as for my life situation, because I got friends here and family, like I really like it. It's a great city to live in. Very blessed.
You mentioned you studied history. Did you study a specific period in history?
Like generally speaking, at the university I was at, University of Adelaide, we basically just like had a general like focus on modern history. So, but like when I did like my kind of thesis at the end, that was actually medieval history. So like it was a bit of a mix of everything.
Did you ever think of becoming a teacher, especially since you have a bunch of tutorials on your YouTube channel? I know it's jagessa-based tutorials, but still you have a knack for sharing insights and tips. Did you ever think of becoming a teacher or a professor?
I certainly did.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly did. And it's funny, like this is my kind of personality, where at the start of the year I applied to like for a teaching like a degree, and I applied for the wrong one, and I was like, oh, well, I just won't do it then. So that was kind of like the trajectory of my life just changed at that moment when I signed up for the wrong one, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just do something else then, I guess.
What led you to study history or philosophy in the first place?
Personal interest in both.
Got
Definitely.
it.
Like lifelong. Yeah. So there you go.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about jagessa, and then we'll talk also about your YouTube channel and your YouTube experience. I think it'll be very interesting for people watching this. What prompted you to play jagessa in the first place? Do you remember?
Okay, so my GeoGuessr story is quite a long one in some ways. I think we first played GeoGuessr at my school, so I'm 22 now, when I was about 14 or 15 actually. Like that was like introduced to us as a class activity for a bit of like fun during geography class. And well, I probably sucked just as much as everyone else. I knew more countries than probably my classmates, but that's about it. And, you know, I don't have any particular memory other than, you know, like having a bit of fun with it. And then I always kind of knew about the game after that, and maybe I returned to it a few times over the years. Definitely I did. And then really maybe almost 2.5 years ago-ish, that's when I like started watching GeoWizard and Geography Challenges. And yeah, probably first GeoWizard, then Geography Challenges as well, and those two and a couple of others. Then I started being like, okay, I really quite enjoy like watching this game, and I have specific memories like of when like GeoWizard like got this like Eswatini round. I was like, how did he get that it was Eswatini? I just could not believe it. Just looked like Australia to me. I couldn't understand how he managed to get that. And so I was kind of like hooked after that. I was like, how has he done that? And so then like I guess like a bit over two and a quarter years ago, then I started playing quite a lot. So yeah.
I think a lot of us have also been inspired by GeoWizard's play until
That's true.
we get good enough that we realize that he's not that strong, which is funny in hindsight, right? Because indeed, just like yourself, I thought, oh, he must be cheating. Or, you know, he's like, well, how does he do it? And then you realize, but with practice, that indeed, you can get to a certain level fairly quickly, and then you can overtake, I guess, GeoWizard, who's a good player, but certainly not one of the pro players like yourself or others now.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Like, I guess, like, he is, like, above all things, an entertainer, I think, and that's why he's got such success. I really respect him, and I love what he did for the community, but yeah, it's true, like, he was never, like, too much of a competitive person, so I guess he just kind of, like, was satisfied with his level and kept on just making fun videos rather than competitive ones. But yeah.
You mentioned being competitive. How competitive are you? From 0 to 10. 10 is, like, I need to win. 0, like, I don't care. I just play for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, historically, I could have, like, put myself at, like a solid, like, 8.5. These days I might be more like a 7 or a 7.5. I'm a competitive person, but, like, these days I can tolerate losing a much more than I could when I was younger, I would say.
But you still like to compete, right? Because 7.5,
Oh, yeah,
8, yeah.
that's for sure.
And in fact, you just told me before this recording that you won the Rainbow Tournament, right? There is a Rainbow Tournament every Saturday, and for you, it's insanely early.
Yeah, so I was up at 5:30 a.m. this morning. That's typically when I have to get up for these tournaments. So I'm recording this on like 2.5 hours of sleep in the evening, so I'm getting a little tired. So hopefully I don't misspeak much at all. But yeah, it was a great one, and this was our first win. So by the time you guys are watching this, that might be old news. But right now, I'm very very pleased with myself because
it's your first victory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice, congratulations. But that's some dedication, right? For you to just get up so early. Are you a morning person?
No. I tend to get up very late.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a bit different for me.
Do you sometimes get some sleep afterwards as a result? Like you do the tournament and so?
Most times. Okay. We had the kick-ons today. We just like stayed in voice chat and chatted afterwards. So like we were like celebrating a bit, and yeah, I didn't go back to sleep today. That's okay though.
Do you participate to any other tournament or competitions whenever it's possible?
Occasionally. I tend to stick to the Rainbow ones because the thing is they're normally all catered towards North Americans and Europeans, so they're normally all starting at like 5 or 4 or 3 in the morning. It's just not really feasible to play that many beyond the Rainbow ones for me. If they were like at a more reasonable hour, then I would play more, but yeah, as it stands, not too many.
That's fair. How much do you practice? You said that you started playing a lot a couple of years ago, and nowadays, or maybe at the beginning, do you remember how much you practiced every day, or you played every day or every week, and how this has changed over time?
Yeah, I can clearly remember how it's changed over time. So when I first got into it, like one thing I didn't say about the story, so it was like I got GeoGuessr subscription for my ex as a birthday present, and like so I'm still on her like email on her account actually. I don't know if that's a TOS violation or something, but anyway, and so like I just like was like I logged in on her account and I was like, oh, I might play this a bit, like because I knew I liked GeoGuessr. I was like, oh, this can be a gift for both of us type thing. Anyway, so then I started playing quite a lot. I was like, okay, I really like this. I started playing on the streak mode, and then I was playing. When I realized I liked it, I was playing like maybe 3 hours a day, maybe more. It became my main game essentially, and so that was like the most I was playing. Like, and then like when I started the channel, I had reached a certain level, and I was also studying, and so I had like kind of put more effort into video making and didn't practice as much. And then, like, when I took a break from the game and went to Europe a few months ago, which I guess we'll talk a bit more about later on, this was in September, I was in Europe. Something about that trip made me go, I really, like, I was watching the tournaments and not playing in them for once, and I was like, wow, I really want to be winning these, bro. I don't want to be sitting here, like, coming, getting out in the first round each time. I want to be winning. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to have a regiment when I get home. I'm going to have a certain amount of games played per day. So that's what I did. I aimed for, like, 50 completed games per day, so 250 rounds of GeoGuessr per day. And that's what I did for the whole rest of the year. So when I got back from Europe, I had 6,500 games played, and by the end of the year, I had 10,000 games played. So I played quite a lot.
You actually managed to stick to that diet of 50 games plus completely. Per day?
Yeah.
Insane. Wow. And since the 1st of January, what happened?
Well, I got the win today, but you mean just in terms of regiment?
Yes.
Yeah, it's eased off a bit. Yeah. But still playing a lot. And now I'm not focusing on games so much, focusing more on like specific things. So I've been doing some meta research like of my own, some like developing my own things in Malaysia and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been fun. Yeah. You familiar with the black stickers on Malaysian polls?
Yes, I am, for the mainland Malaysia.
I've gone through and I've gone through and mapped out all the patterns, all the kind of format that's in each state, and it's different for each state.
Oh, wow.
So I can actually, I think people had kind of written it off, but there is actually basically metas for each state there. So like that's been fun. I've been researching that with a few other friends.
Interesting, fascinating. What advice would you give to someone who's starting to play? Because I feel the level has gone up. The average level has gone up with people like yourself who's teaching everybody. And all the resources that exist online. So what advice would you get to somebody who's just getting started and they could easily get demotivated when they see how insane the guesses are from some players are?
Right. I mean, like, so, like, I think I've watched a few of the interviews on your channel, and it's a common answer to see, like, like the resources are so good these days, but it's actually so true. Like, you can learn so much very quickly. Especially one piece of advice I would give my main one is to spam games. Like, if you want to get good, you just have to play like 5,000 games. If you don't do that, then you won't be good. That's just how it works in my opinion. But also, if you can find like someone who's better than you to play with, obviously like you're not always going to be able to find that because they're going to need some reason to play with you. You're going to need to be friends or something like that. But that's such a great way to learn. Like when I play with people who are better than me, for example, I'm often playing with Jupiter and stuff like that. That's great fun because like he often is just like telling me things. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. I guess I need to know that as well. But yeah, that's a great piece of advice, and it can be at any level. Just find someone who's a little bit better than you and play with them, and it's a good tactic, I think.
Are there any areas of the game that you still find difficult or challenging and you're thinking, I need to research this? Just like what you just mentioned to me about the black stickers in Malaysia. Are there any areas or countries or game modes that you feel you're a bit weaker on and you feel that you need to study a bit more into that area?
Certainly. I would say like North America is probably my biggest weakness. And I know I can get better. I think Canada, I'm reasonable at. USA, I really have struggles with, especially West USA. And there are like places of like where I know I have struggles. For example, like North Mexico and West US are just really like struggle for me. And there are other countries that are like smaller that I just have never bothered to learn. Like Senegal, I just really don't have a good sense of what's going on, and some other ones. But like they're all coming up. So like I'll get them under my belt eventually, and then we'll be good.
However, you do have a superpower right under your belt, and that's Australia. You're almost
Yeah,
always
I would
considered
say
the expert on Australia, and you're insanely good on that.
I would say there are better players than me in Australia, especially now. Since I started like studying the world, I would say there's at least like 5, 6, 7, maybe even more than that these days that who are better than me on Australia streaks. But I still do pride myself on getting some pretty good Australia guesses, and I do like know quite a bit. So yeah, that's true.
We talk about countries right now. Are there any countries or locations in the world that you'd be interested to visit as a result of just seeing them so much on jagessa when you're playing?
Right. So, in terms of countries I want to visit, Bhutan is one that comes to mind. Now I know that Bhutan's relatively difficult to visit because there's like some kind of a tax you have to pay as like a
Yes.
visitor.
Yeah,
I think,
tourist
but
visa tax,
that's
correct,
that.
which is daily. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a country I'd really like to visit. Maybe when I have some more money under my in my pocket or something like that. What else? I think any country along the Andes, and also Mexico, because I mentioned my history love, and I really am interested in the Aztecs and the Mayans. So I think I'd like to go visit the like the Aztec and Mayan pyramids in Mexico, and then yeah, just anything in the Andes. I have lots of I could go on, but yeah, like also the Rocky Mountains again. I've been there once, but I'd like to do a road trip from where my grandpa lives in Vancouver to Anchorage. That's what I want to do. That's probably my next travel.
Okay, so nice. So a few locations in every continent, more or less.
Yeah, true.
You mentioned that you went to Europe back in September, and right after that there was the World Cup. We'll talk about your travel to Europe in a second, but there was also the World Cup in Paris in October. I guess you were not able to attend that, right? If I'm not mistaken. The Jagessa World Cup.
Right. It kind of was a little bit unfortunate timing in the fact that I just kind of booked it just before the World Cup. Really, like I started realizing that everyone was actually going and like it was going to be a pretty cool thing. However, it has to be said that I'm not a strong moving player, and I think most of the games or half of the games were taking place on moving. And if you've noticed about my channel, I never play moving. Like it just doesn't. I really respect moving players, and the skill set does cross over, but not as much as maybe some people think. I don't know. Like I'm just no good at it. I'm pretty garbage. I could become good, but I don't really have the desire to either. It's an art form, and I really love watching the players who are good at it. But yeah, like that also like kind of influenced my decision not to like alter my travel plans for that or something.
That's fair. So not much regret regarding the World Cup?
No, but I hope there's something in the future that like that where I can attend. Yeah.
That's fair. Have you met any Jagessa players in real life? I think you have, right? Because you traveled to Europe in September, as you mentioned, and I think you posted a bunch of videos from there.
That's right. So I have met in real life Lenley, who's like my longest time teammate. We've played a bunch of tournaments together, and he was like my first GeoGuessr friend as well. I stayed at his house. Then also Kodiak, and also Ziggy. I met while I was with Kodiak because they live in the same town. And then who else did I meet? Then I met some Australian players as well when I've been to different cities here. So I've met Willy Woxy. For any of the Aussies who know, I've met Vegetal, and I've met Curania. So there's some Australian pro players too. And yeah, a couple of others as well. I'm sure I'm missing, but that's the main ones that come to my mind off the top of my head. Yeah.
Was it your first time to Europe?
That was my second time to Europe. I actually did a 2-month exchange in Germany back in high school. But I didn't really get to travel, so this is my first time traveling in Europe. Yeah.
So do you speak any German?
I do. Like,
nice.
not fluent, but
Okay.
like I can understand everything, basically, and you know,
Nice.
conversational, yeah.
Do you speak any other languages?
Dad taught me Latin when I was younger a little bit, but no, I don't speak any other languages.
Okay, well, German's not bad already. It's pretty good. Any takeaway from your trip to Europe?
My favorite country over there was Slovenia. I really loved my time in Slovenia. I felt like the people were really nice, and I just really liked. It felt like a very authentic experience, and the fact that it's like the tri-point of cultures, like Italian, like Austrian, and like Balkan. I found that really fun. I don't know. I think that was my favorite, but then I don't know. I just loved the whole time. I had a great time. Yeah, every country I visited, I enjoyed. So yeah, there.
You mentioned you're more of a no-moving specialist, and indeed I've noticed this on your channel. You specifically have a Road to Number 1 series, right, where you're trying to play duels and try to become the very best. I don't know if you've seen the interview with Jake Lyons. I asked him what he thinks of that. He thinks it's impossible. It's crazy. I guess you may have seen that zi8gzag is also trying to get to number 1, right?
He is, although he's playing no moving, which is completely insane.
Do you think it's impossible to get to number 1?
No moving, yes, but I admire him for trying. It's really impressive, the fact that he's able to get, even close to it. But I'm barely able to get close with moving, and he's obviously a great no moving player. But I think actually getting to number 1 would be extremely difficult for him.
He totally respects you, but he thinks it's absolutely insane and impossible to win and become number 1 without moving. What do you have to say to that?
I'll say he's probably right. You know what, Jake? He's not only is he a smart man, but he's also he's up there himself. Like I think he's like top 10 or top 20 or something. So he would know. But having said that, like, I'm gonna give it a go, man. I'm always improving my no moving game, and I think if I guess quickly and put the pressure on, and I get the right streak of games, it is like I think top 20 is possible, and I think top 10 is perhaps possible. Top 1, maybe that's pushing the limits a little bit, but we'll see, right? It's makes a nice and long series.
You're not giving up. So anyone who's not watched this series, go to zi8gzag's channel. You'll see what I'm talking about. I think you just posted less than a week ago. There's one where you finally break into the top 100, if I'm not mistaken, or the top 50 even. Top 50. Yeah.
So
impressive.
hopefully we can go up from there.
Let's talk about your YouTube experience, because you're one of the very active, prolific, but also one of the most well-known YouTubers when it comes to jagessa. You obviously have zi8gzag, who's at the very top, maybe in terms of subscribers, then Rainbolt, very visible. There's zi8peter, which is also in the same league as yourself, and Chicago Geographer, but you have close to 37,000 subscribers. How did you get started on your YouTube channel, and how did you manage to make it grow?
Well, I always had the idea that I wanted to do a YouTube channel from when I was younger. I think a lot of people my age also have had that desire, right? And I never knew what to do. I was like big into Counter-Strike back in the day, but Counter-Strike videos tend to be boring unless you edit them a lot. Whereas I think jagessa, like, you can just jump in, play, and as long as you're a reasonable level, people who are worse than you will love it, like, you know, that kind of thing. So I had that feeling. I was like, okay, like, this is something I can do realistically that's, like, not going to require too much investment at the start. So if I don't like doing it, then it's going to be fine. But if I do like doing it, I can keep it up and, like, just, like, change what I do and make it a bit more production value, I guess. So that's kind of how it happened. I just started making some pretty low effort videos at the start. I had no idea what I was doing with thumbnails. I thought they were good. If you go back, I haven't taken any of them down. You can go back and see my initial thumbnails. I thought they were good. So you can be the judge, I guess. They're not in my opinion anymore. And so I kind of just, like, had very slow growth. The first year I got 2,000 subscribers. So, like, the second year has been obviously much better because I've been gone for 2 years now. So, but, like, yeah, like, it took 6 months to get to 200 subs. So, like, it was really slow going at the start. But it was good because I was starting as well. Didn't really feel like I was losing too much by doing it. And I kind of just, like, slowly got better with, like, in front of the camera and that kind of thing. And yeah, from there, like, it's only gone up and better. So, yeah.
What tips would you have for people who want to get started with their own YouTube channel? You mentioned already a few things in between the lines. You mentioned improving the thumbnail, getting more comfortable in terms of being in front of the camera, and also persisting over time. You mentioned getting 200 subscribers right over 6 months, and then you managed to get 2,000 over 1 year, and then getting to the point where you are today after another year, correct?
Exactly. I think yeah, consistency is the big one. I mean, like, that's why I kind of have, like, the habit of posting every day, because, like, I feel like just the more you put out, the more you test, the more you're going to know about, like, what people are feeling. And also, if you're just always in front of people's faces, it's kind of my tactic where, like, you know, they kind of, like, if they're in that kind of sphere of interest, then they're bound to see you if you make that much. So that was kind of my tactic. It seems to have worked pretty well, I would say. Yeah, I don't know, like I would say, like, improving thumbnails has been huge for me as well. Titling, thumbnailing is much more important than people think when they start out, but of course, like, once you've been in the game for a while, you do start to, like, kind of get that going a bit better. And yeah,
you probably are familiar with the Mr. Beast YouTube channel.
Yeah, I am.
And the reason I mentioned that is one piece of advice that always comes from the founder of Jimmy, Mr. Beast, is that just keep on producing and keep improving one tiny thing, right, for each video that you produce. So that's why I was particularly keen on getting your practical advice on what you paid attention to keep improving and keep being persistent.
Well, I try and take like people's like advice about like how I present things and like the way I kind of approach things. But I don't know, like I think a lot of the time with GeoGuessr, it's less about I think it's less about improving a small thing in a similar kind of video and more about coming up with a new type of video or a new, fresh and interesting idea, which is difficult because the game doesn't really lend itself to that. Like, there's not normally big updates or big, like, changes to gameplay. It's pretty much always the same thing, so you have to be a bit creative. But I enjoy that challenge. Like, it's, I relish it in it. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much, like, I think that's actually the bigger thing. Although, of course, there's always things you can improve. There's always, like, editing things and retention things that you can improve. Also, one thing I wanted to mention with that is I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was within Mr. Beast's first 20,000 subscribers. I used to, or, no, not true. I didn't subscribe to him, but I was watching him back when he had like 20,000 subscribers, which is kind of crazy because he's like on track to become the biggest guy. So I found that pretty fun.
Is that a subtle shout out so that you're included into his next video?
I sincerely doubt that's happening, but Jimmy, if you're watching, hit me up. I will do some GeoGuessr content with you for sure.
You certainly are very creative in trying to find different perspectives, different angles, different ways of highlighting the game and making interesting content. I think that's also why people are drawn to your channel. Do you have a specific schedule or a specific series of themes so that you know that you want to post something a particular day? So we mentioned about the road to possibly number 1 without moving and duels. But you have a bunch of other videos also, like tutorials and very interesting different perspectives. Do you have, how organized are you when it comes to producing content on your channel? It seems very organized. It seems like a multi-person production company, although I gather it's not, but it does seem very organized because you're the one who's the most consistent and posting daily.
Yeah, well, so for example, I have like the Road to Number 1 series, like trying to get one of those out every 3 days or so, because those ones are always consistently well received, and people just want to see more. So that's great. That means that means I have less to think about in the days between. Then I kind of just like I have like a bunch of old ideas that I recycle from time to time, some particular maps that I think make for good viewing and like people continually enjoy to watch, and then I try and cycle in new ideas too. It's really not as organized as you'd think, and also one interesting thing I guess is that most of my videos are filmed the same day. I would say the majority are. So like I tend to work best with that kind of time constraint. I'm a bit of a procrastinator, so I kind of work with that 1 day constraint for each video, and that kind of like, obviously it hurts me sometimes because I don't have a backlog and I have to like cram if I'm going away for a few days or something. But apart from that, like it helps me with my creative process, I think, to like be spontaneous.
What's going to happen when you start working? When is your first day actually for your work?
So in just under a month, I start work, and that's a good question. I dare say I'll keep working pretty hard on the YouTube channel as well when I start work, but I really don't know how it's going to go. If I want to fit in other stuff as well, then it's going to be obviously a bit of a challenge. I'm still at home, so that helps, but I'm looking to move out as well, so that will also be another factor. I may need to hire an editor. I think that could also be the course of action, but I'm not too sure yet. We'll see.
Do you have any specific targets when it comes to your channel in terms of growth or in terms of things that you'd like to do on your channel if you had the time, possibly? But do you have any ideas or things you'd like to share in terms of objectives that you may have set for yourself, considering where you are today?
So I guess like my goal at the start of last year was to hit 10k subs, and I did 30k, so that was like smashed that out of the park. Really happy. I think my goal for this year will be 50,000 subscribers, and I think that's achievable. It depends how hard I work, but I think it'll happen. I hope so. And apart from that, like I would like to diversify my content a little bit, but for now, like I'm really loving GeoGuessr still, so I don't really feel like any pressure to, so to speak. But I really like for example Gavin's videos where he does like kind of more geography related stuff, because I have my own geographical interests as well, and I feel like I could like come up with some interesting ideas in that respect. So I may give that a go, but it requires more effort than just filming gameplay. So like gameplay is like always like the nice the nice fallback option, and then in terms of tips videos and stuff like that, they kind of just come like when I feel like doing them, when I've kind of accumulated a bit of knowledge and stuff like that. So obviously there'll be more of those coming, and I want to release my like Malaysia guide and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing huge overarching like themes or anything like that, I would say.
Are you thinking of making YouTube maybe a full-time career if it works even better? Because I was surprised when you told me that you're going to start work, and at the same time you have GeoPeter, who has almost the same amount of subscribers, who's, I believe, I understand, has quit his job to dedicate all his time to his various streaming and YouTube channel. Yeah,
Peter and I actually caught up in Poland when I was there, and we had a good chat about that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, like I just kind of thought. So Peter like had worked like a job in like a games company for like developing games stuff for quite some time. Meanwhile, I pretty much I've worked like side jobs, but I've never like had a job. So I kind of thought like I want some real life experience as well. That's kind of what I kind of want to have both things under my belt, not just YouTube. And if YouTube really takes off, I will just quit the job. but as it stands right now, I will be earning more money if I go into a normal job. So I think that's what I want to do.
That's fair.
Get that experience as well.
That's fair, totally fair. When you're not playing jagessa, how are you spending your time?
Some hobbies of mine. I really like hiking. And going out on bushwalks. I have a particular group of friends, and we do that relatively often together. I also am a fan of poker, and I get together with my mates and play that. Play a bit of tennis. Definitely still interested in I like watch quite a bit of history and philosophy videos on YouTube, and read a little bit as well. I listen to quite a few books on Audible. And I'm also like a avid music listener. Particularly, I love like underground hip hop music, and then also like various alternative bands and stuff like that. So yeah.
What's a book you particularly enjoyed recently?
I read Crime and Punishment recently, and that's a great novel. I could recommend that to anyone.
What about music? You want to give a name of a band or underground hip hop that you were mentioning? I'm not very familiar, but I'm curious. Go ahead.
My two favorite rappers of all time are Lucky, spelt with an I at the end, Lucky from Chicago, and Blade from Sweden. They're my two favorites of all time, so shoutouts to you if you listen to either of those. In terms of bands, I really like the Smiths, My Bloody Valentine, several others in that kind of vein. That probably gives some people an idea, but yeah, bit of everything really as well.
And when you go on hikes, do you stay overnight?
No, but I think we do have plans to do some. There's two mountains near Adelaide, one called Mount Pleasant and one called Mount Misery, and we want to do like a hike between the two and a camp between them. So yeah, maybe I'll do that at some point and vlog it or something.
Do you know the history behind the names of these mountains, Pleasant and Misery?
I think it actually probably was explained at least one of their names, but I can't remember, to be honest.
I guess that probably will make it to one of your videos if you want to diversify and go into more geography related stuff and not just jagessa.
I feel like some people might want to know that. Yeah, it could be.
Well, it's interesting, right? If you want to go from something pleasant to something miserable, or vice versa, maybe you should go from the other way around, right? From the misery point to the pleasant point.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to ask my friend what he actually wants to do in terms of the order. That's actually kind of an interesting question, isn't it?
Tell us something that nobody knows about you, if there is something like that. Tell us a secret or a special superpower. You may have seen Gavin's video, right? Where he had synesthesia, and I didn't even know the name. Right. I didn't realize it was such a superpower. Yeah, he did say that. Do you have something like that, or anything else really?
Okay, I think like something a lot of people wouldn't know about me is that I am actually a Canadian citizen as well. So as I mentioned, my grandpa lives there, my mom was born there, and yeah, so not quite a superpower, I guess, but I guess the passport's nice to have as well. So yeah. Yeah, I've never lived in Canada. I would like to, because Vancouver's particularly a beautiful, beautiful city, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
As a result, do you often go back and forth between Canada and Australia to visit family?
Yeah, I've been there twice, and I should go again soon, and hopefully that would I would spend some time with family and then go on my Anchorage road trip. That would be my plan.
Got it.
That's one I mentioned before.
Very nice. When you hear the word successful, who comes to mind? Is there anyone from family or celebrities or someone in the jagessa community that comes to mind when I say successful? What's your knee-jerk reaction?
I think what immediately comes to mind is Rainbow. Obviously, like, Trevor and I are friends, but I have to say, like, I really admire him, and it's not only as a player, but particularly the way he understands the game. The way he understands, not I mean, by the game I mean, like, the social media landscape. He really played the whole thing like a fiddle, and I think it's easy to, like, watch, like, the TikToks and see, okay, they're quite simple, and, like, anyone could have done that, like a Picasso painting or something like that, right? But it's actually, like, it is actually very intentional stuff, and, like, I like filming some TikToks with him, and, like, you know, just, like, spending some time with him, I really saw, like, how good he is at that. And obviously, like, I'm on the same pursuit, and so to see, like, his, like, success in that is pretty cool and inspirational. And also, like, I wanted to try and recreate, like in my own way, of course, some of his success. And so it's like, I just like seeing the success he's had and seeing someone who's, like, mastered their craft in that way. It's pretty cool.
It's interesting you mentioned Picasso. Do you know the story of Picasso and the napkin? I don't know if it's a real story, but I read this in one of the books I read. Do you know the napkin story?
It rings a bell, but do
Oh, it's a very short one. It's Picasso having lunch in a restaurant with a friend and doodles on a napkin. And a woman who's sitting, or a person sitting next to that table, notices the napkin, and by the end of the lunch goes to Picasso and says, "Hey, would you mind, like, giving me a napkin? Because I just saw you're doodling on it." And Picasso says, "Sure, it will be $50,000." And the woman is just horrified and says, "Well, you just spent like 5 minutes doodling. Like, how can it be $50,000?" And Picasso responds, "Well, madam, it was not 5 minutes. It was 40 years." Right, and the point is, you know, it's been 40 years of developing that craft or understanding,
right.
And that's your point about, you know, just like it's funny because you mentioned Picasso, so it came immediately to mind that experience, that story of showing how it may seem simple on the surface, but there is probably a lot of thought or editing or preparation coming into play, or even maybe years or months of experience before actually coming to that aspect.
No, yeah. He worked in social media beforehand, and he really understands that kind of stuff. So yeah, I could definitely say that's a good story. It relates definitely to the way I, like, view his success. Yeah,
I always ask the same questions. Not from me, actually. It's come from a famous podcaster, Tim Ferriss. If you could have one gigantic billboard, and then you could put this anywhere in the world with anything on it, what would it say?
Like, I mentioned my kind of philosophical bent, so I would want to make it something more interesting or thought-provoking. I was just watching a YouTube video, and, like, it was just like some sad song or something, but one of the top comments was like, "Everyone's suffering," or something like that. And I actually thought, you know, that's kind of true. Like, I do think, like, obviously some people are happier, some people are sadder, but I feel like that's a great thing to remember, that the human condition is kind of often tough, and no one really had, like even people who ostensibly have it easy often, like, are struggling in some way. And so I feel like that's a good message to just, like, when you come across someone who's, like, doing you wrong in some way or something like that, to remember that, like, there's probably something that's caused that behavior, and there's probably, like, and you know, everyone's kind of going through the human struggle. So I feel like that would be a good message or something like that, you know.
So to be more sympathetic or understanding that there is always a reason possibly for people for suffering or creating harm around them. Is that what you're saying?
That would be the idea. I mean, like, it's not an excuse, of course, but it's just, like, I feel like that's a fundamental truth of, like, existence, you know. And I feel like it's people, like, easily brush it off when someone does something wrong to them, and then don't realize that their own faults and stuff like that, you know.
It's very deep what you're sharing, and I would say unusual, because you have such a positive mindset and so much energy in your videos, and you're always smiling. And I relate to what you're saying here personally, because my father was quite violent, but I've never managed to come to a point of hating, even though he's been dreadful. But I have more pity than hate.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Sebastian. That's sad. But I'm glad that you have that attitude, because I think that is indeed the right way to go about it. So good on you.
Thank you. I've been on my path and my journey from Mount Misery to Mount Pleasant over the past decade. So that's fine.
Well said. Well said. I like that.
Are there any final few words that you'd like to share with anyone watching this?
Guys, thank you so much for supporting me. If you made it to the end of this interview, clearly you care about me somewhat, so I really appreciate that. And big shout outs to Sebastian. You're a really good interview. I really like how you leave space and you have good questions. So yeah, thank you for the interview, and do subscribe to this channel right now because it's a good watch. I've watched the other interviews; they're good. So stay tuned.
Thank you for your kind words. And obviously, I mean, the spotlight is on you. So I encourage others to watch your channel because I like your positive energy. You're very insightful and you have a huge fan base. People love you. It's quite impressive when you read the comments, but I think it's very well deserved. But thank you for your kind words. I have a lot of fun. And I always feel, even though we chat for quite some time, there's always so much we could talk about. But maybe it'll be for another time. We can always do a catch up. If you have the time in 6 months, in a year, whatever, to see how you've progressed by then. So again, thank you so much for your time, Oscar.
Thank you, Sebastian. Till next time.